Welcome everyone to Rise. We are so happy to have you all here with us this evening. We hoped for a very passionate and informative conversation surrounding workforce tonight. I'm here to give you a little bit about the flow of the event and just a couple of reminders for the audience as well. So the flow of the event will be that we will, I will introduce the panel, which we have a great panel lined up for today. And then we'll go into an overview of racial and ethnic disparities to include low income, female gender as well, and found in the workforce. And then we'll get right into the good discussion. So we have some good questions that we've crafted for our panelists. After the questions for the panelists, we'll respond to questions from the audience. You are more than welcome, and we strongly encourage you to post your questions and or comments in the Q&A. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there is a box that says Q&A, and that is where you will need to post your questions, and we will be answering those after we hear from our panelists. And then we'll end with some ending comments. We always like for our audience to have some action items that they can take away from Rise, because that is the intent of Rise. We don't just want you to come and have a conversation. We want you to leave away with things that are actually things that you can do in your community to make the change. So now I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Tanya Seabrooks, who will be your moderator for the evening. Actually, I'm sorry, I need to introduce my panel. Yeah. We're still waiting for some of our panel. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce who's already here with us tonight. We have Miss Kimberly Boyd Lane. Kimberly Boyd Lane is the Director of Community-Based Career Services for Goodwill Industries of Kentucky. In this role, Goodwill strives to assist individuals to gain tools necessary to obtain and maintain employment. Our Power of Work program is designed to assist KTAP and SNAP recipients to transition off of government assistance to gain employment, and Way to Work program assists Hardin County residents to gain employment. So they're hoping to move the needle of poverty in our communities. She has over 25 years of providing instructional training, course development, and implementation, and she is a disabled veteran who served over 10 years in the U.S. Army. She received her bachelor's degree in social work from Spalding University and holds certifications as a certified evidence-based practitioner, certified career development facilitator, and certified financial stability coach, as well as certified financial empowerment coach. She believes it's important to participate in Rise tonight to discuss ways for us as a community to come together to come up with strategies to combat disparities that are found in the workforce. So welcome and thank you to Ms. Kimberly Boyd Lane. Next, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Julia White Springsteen. Julia White Springsteen is an attorney who focuses on supporting nonprofits in our community. We have Ms. LaDaya Owens with us.
Hello, everyone.
From a young age, LaDaya has learned the importance of giving individuals the tools they need to succeed personally and professionally. As a human resources manager, she led her team to be a district leader in training and development, which also led to store bonuses and extra money in the pockets of associates. It was also during this time that a fire was fueled inside her to promote a cohesive and diverse workplace where everyone can learn from each other. She strongly believes that the root of a healthy workplace is having the ability to understand and accept that everyone has something unique and valuable to contribute. Currently, LaDaya works for a nonprofit organization as a workforce development specialist, where she helps low-income Americans seek and find lasting employment in the Louisville metro area. And I know she would be really angry with me if I didn't point out that she is a proud active member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and she enjoys reading and singing.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read Carter's bio. We also have with us tonight, we are anticipating his participation, is Mr. Carter Dyson. He serves as the one-stop director at the Kentucky Career Center, Lincoln Trail. He's also a member of the Elizabethtown SHRM Group, which is a group of human resource professionals. He was an honoree in the 2014, 16, and 18 Who's Who Louisville African American Profiles. And in 2017, he was featured in Louisville Business First as the 20 people to know in business development. Carter is also a proud U.S. Army veteran, where he served as a senior HR manager in 2012. He served 20 years and 6 months. He has an AA in Business Administration from East Mississippi Community College, a BA in Sociology from Arkansas State, and an MBA from the University of Phoenix. He worked as an adjunct professor in the schools of business, management, and humanities at University of Phoenix and at Central Texas College. He and his wife, Fergie, reside in Elizabethtown. All right. That is our bios for tonight. We are excited to have each of you all, and thank you all for taking the time out of your evening to join us for tonight's conversation. Now I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Tanya Seabrooks.
Thank you, Jerisa. Welcome, panelists, and welcome to all the attendees tonight. We are super excited to have each of you here to talk about one of my favorite topics, and it's workforce development. Definitely want to give a shout out to all of our sponsors for this great event. Definitely HCEC, we have WKU, and of course Limestone Bank. We thank each and every one of you for your participation as well. We were able to do some great things, but we can do even better with such great partners. And of course you. Now, as we talk about workforce development tonight, we're going to be talking about it as it pertains to finding a job. What are some of the barriers that we've seen as far as overcoming them? There are several different things that come into play, from the cliff effect, which you're going to hear more about on tonight. You're going to also hear about expungements, the importance of it, and why we are actually leading a lot of campaigns toward it. We'll talk about way to work tonight and why that's important and why we need your support. We'll also be going a little deeper as we talk about what happens at the Kentucky Career Center, because it's more than an unemployment place. It's also a place for the training. There's also avenues to find out how to get more training involved for if you're a current employer, where to send them. You know, like I said, we have HCEC here. There are several different components that we're going to be talking about today to make our county a healthier place, because I do believe that with economic development, if you show that we have a strong and healthy workforce, we will gain the economic development that we're all striving and looking for. But there are some things, and we need your help. So tonight we're going to be asking some questions and get to the deep depth of it, of what we can do and what we are currently doing, and then you'll see how you can help. So we're going to go right into the actual question and answer period, and I'm going to turn it back over to Jerisa. Please remember that we do welcome your questions. So as a Q&A box here, we ask that you submit those and we'll get those questions answered. We have a great panel and they're ready to go right in. So are we ready, Ms. Jerisa?
Yes, we are. You're
All
on
right.
questions tonight, lady friend.
Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, so you want to start with the questions?
Sure. Okay, well, the first question that I have for the panelists is, I'd like to delve into some of the inequalities that may be present as it relates to the application process. Do you feel that gaps such as technology, or maybe those that are impacted by the criminal justice system, or cultural gaps are barriers to minority participation in the workforce? So I would really love for one of our panelists to kind of expound on that question. Julia, if you would speak to the criminal justice system as well as Kim, and then I really wish Carter was on here because I know he's big on the application process, but Ladea, I think that you would be able to cover some of that as well. So we'll start with Ms. Kimberly Boyd-Lane.
In regards to individuals being able to complete applications, you said you wanted me to talk about background issues that they may be facing.
Well, just that too. Some of the technology gaps that you may see, some of the technology disparities that might be present.
Okay, very good. So because I work with a lower income level individuals that are trying to transition back into the world of work, what we have found as a common denominator is that some of the populations, they don't have access, or they don't have the internet capabilities in their home. So they may have a smartphone, but when you're trying to put in an application on your phone, that is just not going to work. It doesn't work. It's not an easy flowing method. When you're looking at The screening process, because we are doing most of our applications online, one of the difficulties that I think that we need to really look at is that based on names, based on zip codes, all of those things that go on your application or on your resumes, that's another way that individuals have been screened out of opportunities. When you're looking at ethnic names, you're automatically assuming that because you have an ethnic name, we put you in another pile. We have opportunities when we've had individuals that we were trying to transition from lower income or underserved or underemployed opportunities back into higher employed because of what their salary history was on the application. It made individual employers seem that they were less qualified. So those are just like a few things that I've witnessed over the years that have been barriers.
Okay. Miss Julia, would you like to speak a little bit about the criminal justice, those that have been impacted by the criminal justice system, how that might affect them in the application process?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I mean, I think the biggest, most obvious detriment is people having to check the felony box when they apply for a job. I mean, that's an automatic, circle bin for a lot of applications. And there's been legislation over the last couple of years to make it easier for expungement. Like in 2018, the fees were reduced. And then just recently in March of this year, there's automatic expungement for acquittals and dismissals. But especially with the expungement process, I mean, that can sit for a long time. They're eligible 5 years after they complete their sentence, and fines and parole and everything else that might be involved. But it's still a hurdle to, $250 per case plus a $50 filing fee, that's a lot of money. And if, you're choosing between paying your rent, paying your heating bill, that's still a problem. And so one of the things we've done, like with HMH, the pilot program, and I know another couple companies in the area, they've taken to just start calling people and ask, okay, what's your story? How long ago did this happen? I mean, and we need more employers that are willing to do that, to not just dismiss it out of hand. Let's just find out what happened and how long ago was it? And so the HMH pilot program HMH took a great chance. It wasn't that big of a chance because she was already a great employee, but our story about Timmy Michelle, who, she'd been eligible for employment, for expungement for what, 10 years almost. And so HMH's program, they'll hire somebody who's been justice involved, and if they have a good HR record for a year, then they'll pay their expungement fee. And so if they're eligible at that time, if not, they'll just, they'll earn it, or it'll stay, it'll wait for them to be eligible. So, this is the kind of opportunity and chance that we need more businesses to take on people. Because really after the 5-year thing, in that 5-year gap, that's when they're the most vulnerable. And that's when they need somebody to take a chance on them the most. So it's that little bitty box, honestly. That's a huge commitment.
Well, Julia, thank you for expounding a little bit on what's been happening with the expungement and how there's been some changes, and they're great. But can you talk to us a little bit, because we need to dispel the myth when we talk about expungements. A lot of times people are misunderstood when we're saying ban the box. Oh, you want there to be we want people that's committed a murder. And we both know Class D felonies is what we're actually going after. But a lot of times, even when you talk to certain employers, they still have the mythological thinking when it comes to what it constitutes as what a person could be for expungements. So could you elaborate a little bit on that, on what you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. Under KRS 431.073, about 70% of the convictions are covered under there. It's possession of a controlled substance, forgery, theft, criminal mischief. It's not sex crimes. It's not crimes against minors. It's not drug trafficking. It's not like the super scary stuff. It's, sometimes a felony can be non-support, non-payment of child support. And that can stick with somebody for way too long after they've already, taken care of it. And so these, another one, receiving stolen property, tampering with physical evidence. I mean, yes, it's a crime, but, 5 years and more after they've served their sentence and done their parole and anything else, they deserve it long before the 5 years is over, really, usually. Or else they're gonna, it's just, like I said, a very vulnerable time before they're eligible for expungement. So KRS 431.073 is the best resource, really, for the listings of common eligible felonies for expungement.
Thank you. And as we look at the different barriers when it comes to workforce, I'm sure each of you, from you, Julia, from the removing barriers and removing obstacles, but you also, I do believe, what Kimberly Boyd Lane would Way to Work, as well as Ladea. And I don't know, did Carter get a chance to join us yet?
Yeah, I'm here. Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I'm sure you all have been in situations where you're looking at a lot of different barriers that they have to overcome. And I'm going to start with you, Carter, and we'll just go around robin. Can you explain to us some of the biggest barriers when it comes to finding employment, just for a livable wage in our area? Because we know there's some sort of challenges there.
So when you speak on the livable wage, I'm going to say something about that, and I'm going to circle back on it. But there was a survey done about 2 or 3 years ago, and the amount that needed to be earned was $16.77 an hour just for a family one to be successful in this area. Now, some of the barriers that people run across, transportation. There's always been a long-running conversation in this area about not having public transportation. The assumption that because everybody has a cell phone, everybody has a vehicle. It couldn't be further from the truth. But the other part of it is that our biggest asset also works against us, which is a lot of people work on Fort Knox, and most of those people do have transportation. Mm-hmm. And the people that are working in the warehouse area, in the industrial part, a lot of those people that work on shift work don't have that. Also, housing, affordable housing, as I just talked about, the $16.77. The affordable housing is an issue, as well as, think about it, daycare. And if you're working, mm-hmm. if you can't get there, even if you get the first shift, you got to be there at 7 o'clock. You got to get somebody up at 5:30. Yeah. If you tell my kids and stuff and everything. So then the other thing is that just because your wages may go up, such as we had some companies in the area that go up to $15 an hour. The flip side of it, though, is that the housing is not going down any though, and it costs just as much now in some areas to rent as it does to own a home, and that there's a bias against that, and in some ways, to where if you don't have the down payment, or if you don't have other things and stuff, so that's some of the barriers that come with transportation, affordable housing, daycare, and lack of livable wages. Just to name a few.
Thank you so much. Ladea Owens, what would you say?
Yes, ma'am. I come at it at a kind of a different approach. If you can repeat the question, because I wrote down some things, but I want to make sure I'm saying the correct answers to your question about the barriers. I wrote down.
Well, just want to make sure, because I know you see different candidates for employment. So what does that look like for you? What are some of the barriers that you've seen has been a problem approach for some of them to gain employment, suitable employment?
Just having great mentorship. I know I have a lot of, well, let me backtrack. Right now, I'm working for low-income youth. That is my goal, is to find them gainful employment. So they may even have the skill set, they may have the know-how, they may even have the enthusiasm to do the job. But when we are coaching them for a job, we can't find good mentors that relate to them and that know how to get down in the dirt with them, because we deal with youth that have homelessness, and we have to find them housing. We deal with youth that come from abusive family situations where we have to advocate for them and put them in placement with a counselor. So, they need that mentorship piece to like walk with them through that journey. You know, let's say that we coach a youth and we develop things and say, hey, we know that you can do this job. We're going to coach you. We're going to give you a mock interview. And let's say they do get the job. We just can't end there, you know, and the youth that I work with, you have to be hands-on with them. You have to be in their ear and let them know that they can do it. I will piggyback with what Carter said. Transportation is a huge issue, especially if that person is qualified for a job that may be about an hour bus ride from where they're located. You know, that is challenging, especially if they don't know bus routes, especially if they are not familiar with the transit system itself. So that is also a barrier for employment. But I will also say after they get to the job, what can be a barrier for advancement is the lack of representation. You know, I know right now there are so many youth that say, hey, you know, I can see myself in this role, but I don't see, I know I can do this job. I know I can be, grow in this company or grow with Metro Parks, but I don't see any representation of me there, you know, or in those higher positions. And so we do have to continue to coach, develop, and mentor not only, you know, grown adults, but youth as well. And I'm passionate about the youth because I believe when you start them young, you know, it builds, you know, and it grows, and they're able to easily reach back to their peers and say, hey, this is what I'm doing, come join me, you know, instead of trying to mentor them at an older age where they're less susceptible to heed advice.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I do believe that's a segue into talking to Ms. Kimberly Boyd Lane regarding that, because with Way to Work, there's a layer of mentorship as well. Ms. Kimberly, can you speak to that with barriers that you may have seen?
Yeah, and so I'm so glad that she said that mentorship, but also being able to have individuals who look like us. Majority of the time when we're looking at mentoring or internships for people of different ethnic groups, to find a mentor who's able to mentor them from their culture is difficult to find. And so what we try to tell individuals, and what I have found just over the years, just let me just keep it very black and white. What I found over the years is that even when you're getting someone to do job coaching or the job shadow, it's going to be someone, if they're looking at a middle management, upper management position, it's going to be someone of a color not like their own. And then there's an expectation for them to already know those unspoken house rules, those unspoken workplace rules that we have to teach individuals on a daily basis, because there are some things that they don't know that they don't know. And so Way to Work program, in our Way to Work program, that's one of the main things that we do, is give them the tools necessary, not only to meet the employer's expectation, but not set them out to just get a job. Let's get a job that you really want to do, because for years, I have seen people say, well, at least it's something. Well, you know, if we wouldn't want to take the job, then why would you want me to offer that job to someone? Especially when you have to break a cycle, a mindset off of individuals when they're trying to begin to increase or develop generational wealth. Well, where do you get that? Where's the starting point? Where is it that someone can come and who looks like me, who can say, here are the rules of this particular game? How do you play that game of corporate America and not seem like a big mouth every time you have a suggestion or a recommendation?
Thank you. Thank you for that. We don't want them to think you have big mouth.
Right.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Now, let me ask this question, just switching gears a little bit. Are there major employers helping to develop high school and post-secondary curriculum to be able to assist with the process that you have with Way to Work? And I know with Carter, there has been some things with the high schools I know they participated in. Have you experienced that with post-secondary as well as high school?
Well, actually, we have, but going backwards a little bit on that, we've got opportunities out there, starting with our host organization, HCEC-TV, they do quite a bit in terms of reaching out and remembering this. As an adjunct professor myself, I firmly believe in education, but I also believe that every job doesn't necessarily require a 4-year degree. In some cases, not even a 2-year degree. A certificate of completion will do. Constantly, when I'm teaching classes, I ask the kids, what kind of degree does Bill Gates have? And of course, they know who Bill Gates is. And I tell them he makes a little bit more money than I do. And I have 3 degrees. So it's not so much about that. And then when you look at a lot of these jobs, that the thing is to get the opportunity to get the interview. And because I've worked in some places where you're thinking everybody has a degree and they don't. They got the proverbial, and you see me doing air quotes, they got the proverbial hookup, and they were able to do the job. And that's where we are in terms of with our people. Now, you've got other areas around here, but the main one, like I said, I want to focus on was HCEC, as well as the Career Center, where we do a lot of training, and all of it is no cost to you. Everything from, and Jerisa had actually done some videos in terms of the process, the interviewing process, as well as learning how to fill out applications, mock interviews, what to wear, what not to wear, what to say, what not to say. Again, one of the panelists already said, you don't know what you don't know. And that is actually the truth. And that's what we have to reach out as professionals.
Yes.
And we have to be able to be willing to reach out and give a helping hand, not so much as try to hold a person down, just to keep ourselves in that position and to be the only one.
That's good. That's good.
That's good.
Julia, I want to go back to you on the last question. I wanted to circle back just to make sure I didn't forget you on the barriers that you've seen, other than, of course, backgrounds, but what are some other things that you've noticed community-wide that probably played into certain candidates may be able to miss an opportunity for employment?
Well, the most, probably one of the more common is what we call the cliff effect, like you guys, like we spoke about earlier. With such low minimum wage, and are just businesses that aren't necessarily paying a living wage, depending on, you talk about housing, Kimberly, especially. And if they get a little bit of a raise, they lose their subsidy. So they can get a little bit of a raise, but it doesn't cover what they're losing as far as maybe childcare subsidy or housing subsidy. And so a lot of employers, like when we had the poverty simulation, years ago, some employers didn't even realize that that's why some of their employees weren't coming for extra training. They weren't looking to get that promotion. They didn't want, they quit rather than get a raise because it just wasn't going to make up the difference. And so that's something that there has to be some sort of a slope that, granted, that's statewide. At the state level, we need to work on trying to get some policy implemented to where that would be more of a slope, but also employers just have to understand more too, what goes into, and have frank conversations with their employees, ask them what's going on here? Why aren't you trying to get this raise? You totally deserve this promotion. What's stopping you? And understand it better. So maybe they can work things out a little bit better with them or try to figure something out. But that's not necessarily from the employer's, it's not necessarily from the employer's side, but it's definitely from the worker's side. They just get stuck. And when you're stuck relying on these subsidies, there's nothing that you're just anchored. And there's no real way out. And so it hurts the worker, but it hurts the businesses because they're having to constantly recruit and rehire and train for these, starting level positions. When somebody leaves because they're too good at it and they would have lost, an important subsidy. And so it's just this vicious cycle that's got to be addressed at a number of different levels, really.
Thank you for that. And you actually did a segue into another part of another question that we have. Now that we're in COVID-19, a lot of things are going to change for a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons. And when you mentioned the cliff effect, the one thing I thought about was you know, the different barriers that you currently have now, but what is that going to look like, you know, it pertains to daycare or unemployment benefits and things of that nature. Starting with you, Julia, do you have some ideas about how COVID-19, in your opinion, would affect some of the barriers that you actually work with?
Unfortunately, it's going to make it a lot worse.
I'm sorry.
Nothing's getting better, people. Sorry. The first thing coming up is the additional unemployment that the federal government was giving. That's going to end. And I think there's about 200,000 Kentuckians that will see their incomes cut when that $600 a week unemployment benefit ends, unless Congress renews it or does something else. That's money that was going into the economy. People were paying their bills. People were feeding their children. And that's going to hurt a lot as far as, you know, just widening the cliff effect. I mean, there's no jobs to go back to right now. We've got an unemployment rate of 12% at the end of May. And, you know, that's down from 18% in April. I mean, it's huge. And so there's no jobs to go back to. So I'm not sure how that's going to get better anytime soon. I'm just all doom and gloom here. I'm sorry. But that's probably the biggest thing I see is that $600 a week, supplement. When that ends, we're going to have more problems because that was going into the economy. If you want to stimulate the economy, people have to spend money to eat, to pay their bills, to not get evicted. And so that's the money. That's what we need. Congress needs to do more we're still in the pandemic. We're still in a crisis. And so it's got to get done, unfortunately.
This is true. Carter, same question. Yes. With the unemployment, what do you foresee?
I kind of was lost a little bit because I was reading the screen and somebody wrote in a question asking was that $6 for one person versus an entire family. And would be yes, that's for $16.77 actually. But back to what you spoke on the COVID-19, it affects people in the lower earning jobs, which in this case, even though this Commonwealth is only a little bit less than 8% when it comes to blacks, and double digits blacks and browns. And so given that effect, those are the people that are going back to work in this pandemic, but they're also the ones that are going to get sick for the most part. So basically your blue collar workers that work in manufacturing environments and stuff where everybody's breathing the same air and everybody's seeing each other and it's hard to, if you will, try to maintain status quo when you're trying to maintain your distance, your social distancing. So those are the things there. If you talk about COVID-19, it is affecting drastically the people of color, the lower income people, who are normally people with let's face it, the less educated people, for the most part, the blue collar workers, because the white collar workers working in the office, the control environment, not really seeing a lot. COVID-19 is something we've never seen before, obviously, and so we don't know how to deal with it. But their jobs you can't do remotely, and now I can do mine remotely. But if you're a waitress or things of that nature and stuff, you cannot do some of that stuff remotely. And so when you go out and try to do it and open up and stuff, you're putting yourself in harm's way. So COVID-19, as we see it now, is an animal that's taking us into uncharted waters right now.
Thank you. Ms. Kimberly.
Well, I find it quite interesting that when you look at the population that are considered essential workers, they're the same population that depend on the benefits cliff that keep them stuck in particular jobs. You also have a particular group of individuals who are getting paid more now that they're unemployed due to COVID than they're making being employed. And so when you're talking about what has COVID done for me from a training perspective is to give me an opportunity to measure and to be able to get a feel for the employers so that they can begin to see, can't find workers to meet your wage level that you're willing to pay when they're making more just on unemployment, number one. Number two, if you really think that they're so essential, the pay should
Yeah.
It should reflect it, yeah.
It should reflect exactly how essential I am, you know, and majority of the individuals who are Black and brown people that are considered those essential workers are very hard workers. And some of them are very educated, especially if you're looking at our international population. They're educated, had other degrees and credentials in their own country, but when they came over to this country, they weren't able to get the same kind of job at the same level because we didn't consider their degree creditable, right? Then we have some people who have kind of gotten into having to take a job working in a grocery store, but they were a doctor in their country, or they were we had a lot of engineers that came through our program. And the only common denominator is that they had to get on benefits to take care of their family because they couldn't find a job from an employer that would pay them enough to be able to sustain a family of four, family of five. If it's $16 an hour for one person,
1677.
live. And the 77 cents, let's not forget that, right?
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
It's 1677 just for one.
But that was some
How
years
many
ago.
of our one household individuals do we serve? Most of our people that I serve in a lot of my programs, especially anything dealing with community-based programming and training, there are families, single family households, low income households that we're having to work against the employer wanting to pay lower wages and work against the benefits cliff. So now we have pigeonholed them into only taking particular positions because we feel that, not we, but they feel that they're better off on subsidy, when our message is you're better off working, but working not in just a job, but in the thing that you were created to do, where you can get the wage that you deserve.
Thank you for that. And that's been something that I've noticed often. I'm sorry, go ahead, Carter.
No, what I was going to say is let's stop using the word job, because that acronym stands for just over broke.
Yeah.
So let's start talking about people getting into their careers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Yes. Well, now, have you all found that in the midst of that, wait, I do apologize. I didn't get a chance to ask Miss Ladea what was her response to that question. When you popped up, I said, oh,
Fine. You're absolutely fine. I know for me, I've had to tell my staff to be creative. Virtual learning has become essential for us right now. We went from, usually our program allows approximately over 1,200 to 3,000 youth to have summer employment. Due to COVID, that number has dwindled down because funding from our champion partners has went down. You know, they had to lay off their employees. Therefore, the internships that were golden internships, the funds had to be allocated elsewhere. So we had to be more creative and say, okay, how can we still hire youth to help them feed their families? While still doing this in the season of COVID. So what we have done is that we've just been creative. Carter is absolutely right. There are a lot of jobs that you cannot do remotely, but we've asked some of our sponsors saying, hey, you know, can you teach them this skill remotely and allow them to do data entry, whatever needs to be done to allow them to have a job, but still develop skills while doing so, you know, and it is very challenging. COVID is not going to leave right anytime soon. So we're still developing on what we have and trickling down into creating Google Classrooms for our youth to learn new skill. I know we implemented a tech program where you learn skills through tech curriculum, where you're able to get $1,200 this summer. But it depends on how far you go in the program. So if you complete the program this summer, you get $1,200, right? But if you don't complete the program, wherever you stop at, you get a certain amount depending on where you stopped. But we just had to be creative, and it's going to continue that way. Even how I do business and how I engage with employers are having to be creative, just so that we can continue to provide support to our employees.
Thank you very much for that. One of the things that we talk about a lot when we were having conversations around workforce is in Hardin County, we're considered a very culturally diverse. So we have everything here. When you want to talk about the different backgrounds, we have a plethora of veterans. We're a very veteran heavy community that bring military spouses along. And there's also, that's another pool that's untapped. We also have a huge commuter capital in Hardin County where they're traveling out of other counties, which is absolutely asinine because you're thinking, this is a pretty big county. There should be a career, that should be able to satisfy the reason why I chose to be here in the suburban area. And when you talk about the barriers, I want to know from each of you, and this is our final question, how do you feel the marketing from some employers in this county for people of color? Do you feel that we have sustainable things to attract people of color? And I'm talking Black and brown. I'm also talking, when it's time to recruit that particular talent, we're talking about wage, but we're also talking about in terms of if you want them to bring their families here, do you feel that the way we market through the economic development, this different sources that is being used to promote this county, do you feel that there's adequate representation of things to do for people of color versus non?
Okay, so I'll jump on this first then. And what I would tell you is that, first of all, we have to be careful with our verbiage when we're talking about recruiting people. You can't just go out and recruit somebody because you're trying to get a minority, right? But by the same token, though, you have to make it attractive to people that want to come into your area. Kind of like with veterans and stuff. When we have our local veteran opportunity program and our disabled veteran employment representative go out and speak to people, they are encouraging people, at least them, the businesses, at least to grant the veteran an interview, not to hire the veteran. You can't go out and say, I want you to hire this guy. We all know, if I can keep it real, we all know that sometimes people get the hookup, right? Right. There are sometimes that people get hired because they are veterans. Just like people get hired because they're not a veteran. The first job I ever had when I worked on Governor Clinton's staff is because I was a football player that was graduating at midterm and they needed somebody to work. I didn't know Bill Clinton from the Man on the Moon. But because one of the guys that was doing our play-by-play was his campaign manager, I walked into that job. So sometimes it's about timing, but a lot of times though it's about, do you really want to be here?
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Oh, thank you.
I think Carter froze.
Commonwealth thing, can't go around doing based on color on it. Let's keep that real, right? But by the same token, I don't want you to hire me because of that, but I definitely don't want you not to consider me. And that's what we run into. And that's what we have to educate our HR people on, not having an implicit bias towards somebody that doesn't look like them because somebody's not from E-Town.
Okay, so before we go any further with that, sorry, I did not mean to interrupt you, Tanya, but I think it's important that we give a good context on what implicit bias actually means, because it's a term that's thrown around quite a bit. Yes. So I would like one of my panelists to kind of go into what implicit bias is, because then maybe people can acknowledge that everybody has biases.
Okay, I'll jump back on it. Okay, well, it's an unconscious. It's not conscious now. It's not, because implicit taken from the word implied, right? So it's an unconscious bias, a social stereotype towards some groups or individuals outside of the group that you're comfortable with. So somebody that's different from you, maybe they're from the South, maybe they're from the North, maybe you have form opinions. I'll give you an example. An implicit bias when it comes to food is that everybody from the South hunts and fishes. And Teresa knows I'm not a hunt nor fish, except for I hunt and fish in Kroger's and Walmart, but not in terms of going out in the real world. So there are some implicit bias based on where you're from, based on how you look, based on your gender, based on your religion. So, but they are unconscious though. Anything else would be, if it's conscious, it's called discrimination.
Sure.
We all have biases. You know, we all have biases where we each have our own feelings and judgment on a certain things and situations. But I think that we have to understand that everyone should have a voice at the table, and that we have to allow room for diversity to create a place where inclusion can be rooted and grow. You know, everyone has to be bought in on that it's okay, that offense is okay. You have to trust me enough to offend me, and to have those courageous conversations like we're having now. Because when it comes to implicit or unconscious bias, it's easy to get caught up in a way of thinking, and you think that everyone should adapt to that way of thinking, and you begin to gauge how you react and how you respond and how you hire and how you promote based on your way of thinking and your thought process. And I even go a step further, as Carter said, like, you know, another example is that all Black women are angry. You know, we're not angry, you know, but something that I may say may make you angry, but it's not coming from a place of anger. It's just I'm being outspoken, you know? So we still have room to grow on that, definitely. I have
It's funny you mention that because I talk with my hands like you do. And the minute if my hands move, it's not that I'm angry. I'm just passionate about what I'm talking about, or I get excited. And that can be misunderstood as, oh my goodness, she's angry, put your hands down. You know, it's funny when you mention that.
You come with a suggestion, you know, hey, I think that we should paint the break room blue instead of green. And because I'm animated, oh, she's angry. She don't, you know, or she feels some type of way, or she's upset that we paid it green instead of blue. No, it was just,
it's not,
you know.
Now calm down.
Yeah, I know, right?
Calm down.
Very, yes.
And I think that's one of the things that really everyone needs to look at. It's not what you say sometimes, it's what you don't say sometimes. So for instance, if two people walk in the room late, one person may get updated on the information that was spoke about before they entered the room. The other person will get a look like you knew what time the meeting was supposed to start, right? Implicit, unconscious, right? I didn't know that I gave that other person like, oh, come on. And the other person was like, here you are late again, or whatever. The other thing could also be something as simple as not wanting to give all the information that you should give about a specific project. You know, it's like, we'll handle this part and you can just handle that part. Or the one that I love the most that really, because of some of the things that I do, what she meant to say, it's like having to translate what I was trying or intending to get across. And instead of allowing the person to use effective communication skills to begin to ask me for the feedback or for clarification of what I said, you know, I have others trying to translate what I meant to say. And so you have that in all walks, but especially when you're dealing with people who are of brown and Black, I have seen over the years.
And you have
that step in the sun moment
as well.
Huh?
You have that at all levels. Unconscious bias is present in all levels of the workplace.
Yeah,
it is.
I said
it is.
Step in the sun moment.
Well, we're actually going to curve this conversation and go right into Q&A, because I think we could talk about implicit bias for hours, days. And so to make sure that we stay true to our time, we're going to go right into the Q&A led by Danielle.
Okay, so one of the first questions we have, and this is a wonderful question. With regards to recruiting and encouraging people of color to apply, do you have suggestions for the best places to advertise open positions locally? Another question. I think this one is kind of a question that has a lot of history behind it. What is the possibility of this town or county ever getting public transportation? Transportation is a big obstacle. So I know Julia has worked on transportation in Hardin County through removing obstacles. If you'd like to start, and then other folks jump in on this question here.
Mhm.
I wish I could say it was right around the corner, or even in the horizon. We have tried. I mean, we've talked about it. We talk a lot, and I'm not sure anybody's come up with a solution that's palatable for all, or profitable for the right people. Tanya, jump in whenever you feel like it. Save me.
So I will jump in. We've done studies, and there are people in the community that feel like having public transportation is not an obstacle for some people, and they don't feel that there is a need to have public transportation. And that is what I have heard in the midst of meetings that I've also been in concerning the need for public transportation. It's almost like you have two sides of the fence. There are people that need the transportation, and then there are people on the other side that don't need it. So
it's another thing that we can, I'm sorry, Teresa, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Go ahead, Julia, jump in there.
Well, it's another thing that we could also get creative about, though, because I think Paducah has their trail system, and they've made sure that their bike trails go near not just recreational areas, but they go near shopping areas where people need to go shop to get their groceries or whatever, or where they might actually work if they have a retail job. So people could bike to work, or walk to work safer. More sidewalks would help, but also expanding our trail system, not just for recreational use, but for transportation use, for some people would be a huge start. Try to get creative about it as far as, okay, if we're not going to have buses, how else can people get there safely and not have to walk along Dixie or wherever they need,
the one thing is, you make a great point about expanding those bike trails, because we've had the conversation, and I'll blankly just say it. The people who are telling us we do not need buses are the people who have 3 and 4 cars and probably getting ready to retire. So that's the conversation. So you have people that's making a decision about something that's a barrier, but they're not affected by it. So therefore, it's not an issue. Whereas from us working on the side of trying to remove the barriers, because we can fight it back and forth all day long, but the bottom line is there's a barrier. If we're saying that we need public transportation, then we need public transportation. It's just like, hey, we need running water. We need running water. We make sure that we can have that. And you're right, everybody can't ride a bike. Some of us are overweight because we have enough restaurants to, we eat good. So we got that part. But, when it comes to the conversation about transportation, we have people that are sitting at the table to make that decision. And because it's not affecting them, it's not a situation that's being addressed and attacked. And I'm thankful that we're going to keep having that conversation until we find some way to remedy the situation.
So I just want to jump in for a second on that, and just from a little bit of other historical perspective. Warm Blessings ran a program called Ride to Independence for a number of years in our community, and they would pay for transportation for people who were just getting a new job, and they would pay for that transportation for 6 weeks, whether it be a cab because of the timing of their job, or whether it was using TAC. Now, when we ran this program, we ran out of funds quicker than you can even imagine. We were over budget on this program every time we ran it, because there is so much need. People want to work. They are willing to work. We did not have a problem people going out and finding jobs. It was the transportation piece. And once we eliminated that transportation piece, they became really good employees, and they were able to go to work and make those networks to then help them either, get their car fixed through someone they met there, or they're able to get a ride to work, or whatever it may be, to be able to or get their insurance, or whatever it is, to be able to get to work. So we know the need is there, and it was a creative solution that we ran out of funds for, and so it no longer exists. So the question is, how do we take that model and upscale it? And so I just wanted to throw that in real quick.
And there's really good data from Warm Blessings about that model. I mean, there's solid data that showed, you know, people once they had a steady job, they got their car fixed, they got their insurance, they were able to buy a little car or something. I mean, but it goes back to, why should they have to? In a 29,000 person, I mean, just E-Town, but in a county this size, we should be able to, not everybody can ride a bike, like somebody commented on the, in the comments. I mean, it's true. But, so, I mean, yeah, Ride Independence was a fantastic program, and there's good data showing that there's a need, constant need.
So I do want to say that in the Way to Work program, we do offer transportation for individuals who are going into employment until they get their first paycheck. And then once we have developed a budget and a plan for them, Goodwill Industries has our Car to Work program. We assist individuals with transportation, and we kind of have a secured opportunity for them to get not a lemon, but a car that has been vetted. Have some reliable transportation going back and forth to work. But we have to keep in mind, not everyone wants to drive. Sometimes you have individuals in a population who just do not want to drive. And so we have to, as a community, begin to think about the least of these. You know, are we serving the least of our community to the best of our ability? We're not serving the least of our community to the best of our ability, then we're really not being good stewards over everything that we've been given to do.
Well, I thank you all so much for everything. I would like to thank Ms. Ladea Owens, Mr. Carter Dyson, Mrs. Kimberly Boyd Lane, and Mrs. Julia Springsteen. We can't thank you enough for taking the time out to give us all that we needed to know today. I mean, and we had to cut this short. We could go on for a little while longer, but we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Jerisa. She's going to close us out. Again, thank you so much. We want to thank our partners again, Elizabethtown Community Technical College, WKU, and Limestone Bank. And it was a joy to moderate for this evening. I'm Councilwoman Tanya Seabrooks, and it's been a pleasure. Ms. Jerisa.
Thank you all for being so patient, and we really try to be cognizant of everybody's time, but it's when you get into these good conversations, it's hard to put them to an end. As we draw out the evening, I'd like to hear from the panelists on those action items that I mentioned earlier. What is one thing that this community or HR or employers in this community can do to eliminate inequities in the workforce? And I will start with Ms. Julia.
I just got to go back to what I was talking about before. Honestly, we need more HR professionals and companies, really. I mean, honestly, we have some downtime now. Some of the companies, unfortunately, have downtime to look at their policies for hiring people who have been justice involved. And if that box is checked, give them a call and find out the details and take a chance, because they may become your best employee. But it takes reaching out one time and just seeing how it will go to do that. But it takes taking a chance, frankly. We need more companies to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Kimberly?
I would say talk to their employees. So many times we build programs or we try to fix a problem without even asking a question. And so talk to their employees and see what are some of the things that would make you feel included in the processes. Because when you're talking about diversity and inclusion, ensuring that everyone is included in the success of the company by giving everyone an equal opportunity within the organization.
Thank you. Ms. Ladea?
Yes, I am a firm believer as an HR professional, you cannot take the human out of human resources.
That's
and when
right.
you support the human, you have to support the whole human. So that's allowing them to have a voice, even though their voice or their beliefs may differ from your own. I do agree with Kimberly. You have to ask your employee, what are your thoughts, and allow their input to be implemented so that they can feel like they belong and that inclusiveness can be built upon.
Yes.
Mr. Dyson?
Well, let me say this. This is from my experience coming out of the military as an HR specialist, and also when I came to this great city. What I would say is that, and please take it the way I give it, a lot of these HR people that's in these positions to hire really need to be trained. Mm-hmm. They have these preconceived ideas about people when they come to see them. A lot of times you're held back because your qualifications may be better than theirs. And those are the things that you may have gotten this job because of the proverbial hookup. And that's not fair to people. It's not fair to your company when you're trying to bring good people aboard. So I would suggest that all of our HR people, the majority of them that are in these companies, be them small, be them large, get some type of training from somebody other than somebody in your building to tell you how to deal with people. I'm not saying you got to talk slang and do all that kind of stuff, but I also don't think that you need to hold it against me because I don't play golf. And so those are the things there that I think more often, because a lot of times, based on your qualifications, sometimes you won't even get hired because you may be looking too good. So those are the things there. So I think a majority of our HR people that are hiring, they need to go to some training. And there are those of us around here that be willing to do it for free of charge.
Carter, that's a whole nother hour of conversation if everybody wants to stay.
Well, if they ask me, that's why she put me last.
This is awesome. Thank you. Y'all are so funny. I want to thank our whole audience for taking the time to phone in and spend the evening with us. RISE is formulated to help you to rise out, to be able to have these uncomfortable conversations. And we want to be sure that we give you action items. We will be here next Thursday from 7 to 8. Our topic next Thursday is health and wellness. A couple of other things I'd like to point out. You still have time to buy the RISE t-shirts. Proceeds of that go towards the Equity Through Education Scholarship for ECTC. You can buy them. We've got them posted on our Facebook site. We've already collected some money that's going to help a couple of first-time freshmen at ECTC come into school. So I'm really proud of that. And we want you to take these action items and actually apply them to your community. That's the only way that we can be change agents and champions for diversity and inclusion. I did want to jump on here real quick. Somebody asked a question about diversity and inclusion. Diversity is the intermingling of different people. Inclusion is the exception of those different people. So I did want to answer that question very quickly. With that being said, that ends our evening of RISE for Workforce. Thank you again for everybody for joining us. Especially thank you to our panel. Thank you to our tech expert, Dr. Danielle Lovell, and thank you to our moderator, Tanya C. Brooks. We will see you next Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Have a great one.